Already in progress, Admiral. But there's one more thing you should know. The phenomenon ... it's not infallible. There are signs that previous sweeps missed things. Small populations, isolated worlds, civilizations that were too primitive to register as threats. Life finds a way to survive even this. You're saying there might be other survivors? Not from our galaxy, the process is too thorough now. But from previous sweeps in other galaxies. Scattered, isolated, probably living very differently than they once did, but surviving. Santos looked out at the darkness between galaxies now, seeing it not as empty void but as an ocean where other Orcs might be sailing, carrying the remnants of civilizations lost to cosmic necessity. Then we're not alone, she said. Somewhere out there, others made the same choice we did. The question, Zethkar said quietly, is what we do now. We have the combined knowledge and population of 47 species advanced technology, and potentially millions of years before the phenomenon reaches us again. Do we hide? Do we try to rebuild? Do we look for others like us? Santos was quiet for a long moment, thinking of the billions they'd saved and the billions they'd left behind, of the civilizations that had faced the same choice across cosmic time, and a few who'd made the hard decision to leave everything behind and trust in the darkness. We do all of it, she said finally. We hide until we're strong enough to defend ourselves. We rebuild because that's what intelligent life does. And we search because no one should face the universe alone. She turned to face both of them, her expression resolute despite the magnitude of what lay ahead. But first we survive. And we remember. Every species, every culture, every piece of knowledge we manage to save. We keep it alive out here in the dark so that someday, when it's safe to return, we can plant the seeds of galactic civilization again. And if it's never safe to return? Zethkar asked. Santos smiled, and in that smile was all the stubborn determination that had carried humanity from caves to stars. Then we make the darkness a little less dark. We build something new out here, something that can't be processed or recycled or swept away. We become the civilization that the universe can't afford to lose. Outside the viewport, construction ships continued their work, building humanity's first truly permanent home among the stars. It would take generations to complete this city between galaxies. But for the first time since leaving home, Santos felt hope. They'd pressed the wrong button, accidentally saving galactic civilization. Now they had to figure out how to keep it saved. 5 years after the Great Evacuation, the new Geneva station floated in the cosmic void like an impossible flower blooming in absolute darkness. What had begun as an emergency construction project had evolved into something beautiful, spiraling. Habitat rings connected by graceful transport tubes. Massive hydroponics domes glowing with the warm light of artificial suns. And at its heart, the memorial core where the cultural treasures of 47 species were preserved in crystalline storage matrices. Dr. Zethkar, he'd earned the honorary doctorate for his work in interspecies psychology, stood in the Altair Memorial Garden, tending to the silver-leafed memorial trees that grew in careful spirals around holographic displays showing his homeworld as it had been. The trees were real, grown from seeds they'd managed to bring in the evacuation, but they'd been modified to thrive in the station's artificial environment. Each garden told the story of a lost world. The morning meditation circle is beginning, announced Keeper Veshora, her Narian form coiling gracefully between the memorial trees. She'd volunteered to help maintain the gardens after her own people's section had been completed, an underwater habitat that somehow managed to be both heartbreaking and beautiful in its recreation of the coral cities of Nerea Prime. Zethkar nodded, finishing his work with the nutrient feeders. The morning meditation had become a tradition among the survivors. Time when representatives from all 47 species would gather to share memories, stories, and hopes for the future. It helped maintain the psychological bonds that kept the refugee civilization from fragmenting into isolated enclaves. As they walked through the Memorial Corps' central corridor, Zefkar marveled at what they'd built. Children of a dozen species played together in the recreational areas, their laughter echoing off walls lined with art from across the galaxy. Scholars huddled over shared research projects, combining knowledge systems that had never been meant to work together. Vendors sold food that mixed culinary traditions in ways that would have been impossible on their homeworlds. It was beginning to feel like home. The meditation chamber was a vast spherical space at the station's heart, its walls displaying a real-time view of the surrounding cosmos. As Zefkar entered, he saw familiar faces arranging themselves in the traditional circle. Admiral Santos representing humanity, Elder Thrix for the surviving Thurlians, Mothership Kala speaking for the hive-minded collectors, and dozens of others. But today there was someone new. A figure in an environmental suit sat slightly apart from the main circle, their species unidentifiable through the protective gear. Admiral Santos noticed Zefkar's curiosity and gestured for him to join her. "We have a visitor," she said quietly. "They arrived 3 hours ago on a ship we don't recognize." "Alone? Another survivor?" Zefkar asked, though something about the figure's posture suggested more complexity than that. "We think so, but they won't remove their suit or allow medical scans. They claim they need to speak to our Cultural Preservation Council about something urgent." Elder Thrix's deep voice rumbled through the chamber as the meditation began. "We gathered today to remember those who could not join us, to honor the worlds we have lost, and to strengthen our bonds as the inheritors of galactic civilization." The ritual proceeded as it had for 5 years, with each species representative sharing a memory or story from their homeworld. The Vorthan delegates spoke of crystal cities that sang in harmony with solar winds. The Draconian ambassador described the Great Forge Mountains where their people had first learned to shape metal and flame. When it came time for new voices, Admiral Santos gestured to their mysterious visitor. "Our guest has requested to share something with us," she announced. "They come from far away." The figure stood slowly, their movements suggesting age or injury. When they spoke, their voice was filtered through the suit speakers, but the words were clear. "I am Historian Kefter of the Wanderer Fleet. I have traveled for 60,000 years to find you." Silence fell over the chamber. 60,000 years longer than recorded history for most species present. "I represent the survivors of Galaxy M33, what your astronomers call the Triangulum Galaxy. We faced the same choice you did, 57,000 years ago. We chose to flee into the void." Zefkar felt his breathing quicken. Another survivor fleet. Another group that had escaped the cosmic recycling process. "We've been searching ever since," Kefter continued, "looking for others like us. Others who refuse to accept extinction as natural law. You are the 43rd survivor fleet we've encountered. 43rd. The number hit the chamber like a physical blow. They weren't alone, they weren't even rare. Across the universe, civilizations had been making the same desperate choice for millions of years. What happened to the others? Mothership Kala asked, her translated voice carrying harmonics of fear. Kefter was quiet for a long moment. Some thrived. Some built great works in the darkness between galaxies. Some found ways to return home after the recycling was complete and reseeded their galaxies with new life. Others. The figure's head dropped. Others were not so fortunate. "The danger doesn't end with escape," Admiral Santos said, understanding. Immediately, "No. The void between galaxies is not empty. There are other things. Older things. civilizations that evolved in the darkness itself, feeding on the energy of fleeing refugees, cosmic storms that can strip away a fleet's shields, black holes that drift through the void like hunters. Elder Thrix leaned forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. But you survived. Your fleet endured. What remains? Of it, Kefter replied bitterly. We began with 12 billion souls from 49 species. I am the last of the Wanderer fleet. My ship is a memorial now, carrying the cultural heritage of civilizations you've never heard of. The weight of that statement settled over the chamber like a shroud. One being carrying the legacy of an entire galactic civilization. Why did you seek us out? Zefkar asked gently. Because you still have hope, Kefter said. I can see it in what you've built here. The other fleets I've encountered ... They were either already dead or dying inside, consumed by despair and isolation. But you're still building, still growing, still believing in a future. The historian activated a portable holographic projector, filling the chamber with images, vast structures floating in the cosmic void, cities that spanned light years, artificial worlds powered by captured dark matter. This is what's possible. Kefter continued. The Eternal Fleet has been building for 2 million years. The Drifter Collective has learned to harvest energy from cosmic background radiation. The Memory Keepers have preserved the cultural heritage of over 300 galaxies. They're still out there? Admiral Santos asked. The successful ones, yes. They've transcended the need for planets or stars. They've become something new, post-galactic civilizations that exist purely in the spaces between spaces. Zefkar stared at the images, seeing glimpses of a future he'd never imagined. Humanity and its alliance partners weren't just refugees. They were the newest members of a vast community of survivors that spanned the universe. But membership in that community must be earned, Kefter warned. The void changes you. Forces, evolution or extinction. You'll face choices that will test everything you believe about civilization, cooperation, and what it means to be intelligent life. What kind of choices? Mothership Kala asked. Resource allocation when there are no resources. Survival decisions when helping others means dooming yourself. The temptation to become predators rather than refugees. Kefter's voice carried decades of pain. We lost 16 species to internal conflicts, another 12 to despair-induced mass suicide. The remainder ... The figure paused. The remainder changed so much they were no longer recognizable as the people who'd fled our galaxy. But some made it, Admiral Santos said firmly. Some found a way to survive without losing themselves. Yes, and that's why I'm here. To offer you what I never had, guidance from someone who's walked this path. Warning about the challenges ahead, and most importantly, Kefter stood and began removing their helmet. The face revealed was humanoid but subtly wrong, skin with a metallic sheen, eyes that reflected light like mirrors, features that seemed to shift slightly when viewed directly. Proof that survival is possible, even if it requires becoming something new. The chamber erupted in excited conversations as delegates huddled together, processing the implications. They weren't alone. The universe was full of survivors, builders, civilizations that had refused to accept extinction. But survival came with a price, Admiral, Zefkar said quietly, moving closer to Santos. This changes everything. If there's a community of survivor fleets out there ... then we need to decide if we want to join them, Santos finished. And what we're willing to become to earn that membership. She looked around the chamber at the delegates, the children playing in the corridors beyond, the gardens where the heritage of 47 species was carefully preserved. The question is, she continued, do we stay here in our safe corner of the void, building our own civilization in isolation? Or do we take the risk of joining something larger, something that might help us grow beyond what we ever thought possible? Keftor approached them, moving with the careful gait of someone adapted to artificial gravity. There's something else you should know. The recycling process in your galaxy ... It's accelerating. The phenomenon has learned from the resistance it encountered in the outer rim. It's becoming more efficient. How much more efficient? Zethkar asked, dreading the answer. Our long-range sensors detected the final processing of your galaxy's core 3 months ago. What should have taken 40 years was completed in 7. The chamber fell silent. Their home galaxy, everything they'd left behind, was gone. Not just consumed, but erased so thoroughly that even the cosmic background radiation showed only empty space where spiral arms had once turned. Which means, Keftor continued, the next recycling cycle will be even faster. The civilizations in nearby galaxies have perhaps a decade before the phenomenon reaches their space, and when it does, it will be unstoppable, Admiral Santos said, understanding completely. Unless Keftor's altered features arrange themselves into something. Like a smile, the survivor fleets do something about it. You mean fight back? Elder Thrix asked, his warrior's instinct stirring. I mean transcend the cycle entirely. The most advanced survivor civilizations have been working on a project for millions of years. A way to break the recycling system permanently, to allow complex life to evolve and persist without periodic extinction events. Is that possible? Mothership Kala asked. We think so. But it requires resources, knowledge, and cooperation on a scale never before achieved. It requires species willing to sacrifice their individual identity for the greater goal of universal freedom. Zethkar looked around the chamber, seeing the faces of people who'd already made that choice once, who'd left everything behind to preserve the possibility of a future. They'd pressed the wrong button by accident, saved galactic civilization by mistake. But maybe, he thought, they could press the right button on purpose this time. What do you need from us? Admiral Santos asked. Keftor's smile became more genuine. Everything. Your knowledge, your resources, your people. But most importantly, your hope. The project requires beings who still believe that the universe can be better than it is. And in return? In return, you become part of something that spans the cosmos. You help write the next chapter in the universe's story. And maybe, if we succeed, you help ensure that no civilization ever again has to choose between extinction and exile. Admiral Santos looked at Zethkar, then at the other delegates, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. They'd built something beautiful here in the void, a new home for the survivors of galactic civilization, but beautiful wasn't enough. Not when there were others out there facing the same choice they'd faced, making the same desperate flight into darkness. When do we leave? She asked. Keftor's laugh was like music played on crystal instruments. 3 days to prepare. The Eternal Fleet is expecting us. As the meditation circle dissolved into planning sessions and urgent preparations, Zethkar found himself standing alone in the memorial garden, looking at the silver trees that carried the genetic heritage of his lost homeworld. They were leaving. Again. Abandoning another home in pursuit of something larger than themselves. But this time, he realized they weren't running from something. They were running toward it. Epilogue. The button that started everything 100 years after the great evacuation in the vast archives of the Eternal Fleet's primary consciousness bank. A young archivist named Zara herself descended from the union of 3 different species accessed the historical records for her research project on accidental catalysts in galactic history. The story she found would have been impossible to believe if it weren't documented in 17 different formats by witnesses from 47 species. The Great Evacuation, the event that had led to humanity and its alliance partners joining. The community of survivor civilizations, the chain of events that had ultimately contributed to the breaking of the universal recycling system. All of it could be traced back to one moment. High Chancellor Murdoch, exhausted after 3 days of debate, reaching for a communication button and pressing the wrong one instead. In the century since that moment, the accidental evacuation order had saved 2.5 billion lives, led to the formation of the Intervoid Alliance, contributed crucial knowledge to the Transcendence Project, and helped break a cosmic cycle that had governed universal evolution for billions of years. Complex life could now evolve and persist indefinitely. Galaxies could develop civilization without fear of periodic extinction. The universe itself had become a different, better place, all because someone pressed the wrong button. Zara smiled as she compiled her report, thinking about the strange ways that history turned on small moments, tiny mistakes that became enormous turning points. In her research, she'd found dozens of similar incidents, wrong numbers that led to first contact, mistranslated documents that prevented wars, navigation errors that discovered new worlds. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor. She was about to close the file when she noticed a final addendum, added just 50 years ago by someone identified only as ZK, original Altair survivor. "I've lived long enough now to see how this story ends," the note read. "We survived. We thrived. We helped break the chains that bound intelligent life to cycles of extinction and rebirth. But I want the record to show that none of this was planned. We didn't save the galaxy through wisdom or foresight or careful preparation. We saved it through panic, accident, and the stubborn refusal to accept that extinction was inevitable." High Chancellor Murdoch never lived to see what his mistake accomplished. He died defending the homeworlds during the final recycling, believing he doomed galactic civilization with his error. I hope, wherever consciousness goes when organic life ends, that he knows the truth. He didn't doom civilization. He saved the universe. Sometimes the wrong button is exactly the right choice. Zara leaned back in her study pod, looking out through the transparent walls at the vast construction projects surrounding the eternal fleet, new worlds being born, artificial galaxies taking shape, civilizations being seeded in the spaces between the old spiral arms. All because, a century ago, someone had been too tired to read the labels carefully. She made a mental note to be more careful with her own button pressing in the future, but not too careful. After all, some of the best things in the universe started with happy accidents. End of story. The end.